As President Donald Trump aggressively pursued a trade war against America's top trading partners, the global response has been swift and unforgiving. China, particularly, has shifted its imports toward Canada and the European Union. This caused U.S. markets to tumble, and as its businesses faced increased uncertainty, inflation became a growing concern. This unexpected move raises a critical question. Will Trump double down on his aggressive trade stance? Or will the economic consequences force him to reconsider? Join us to reveal how China reduced its reliance on American goods, a major blow to the U.S. President Trump's decision to impose sweeping 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada took effect on March 4, 2025. It was widely accepted as an attempt to pressure America's top trading partners to agree. However, economists cautioned that such a decision might affect not only the Mexican and Canadian economies, but also the U.S. economy, particularly during a time of inflation clouding American consumers. In addition to tariffs for its North American neighbors, the Trump administration also announced duties on all Chinese imports that would be boosted from 10% to 20%, and raise existing tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods. China and Canada immediately retaliated with their tariffs on American products, while Mexico signified that it would unveil its measures by March 9, 2025. Analysts say it could escalate into a full-blown trade war and further worsen economic uncertainties. According to the White House, tariffs would be necessary to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Government officials clarified that President Trump had given both Canada and Mexico ample opportunities to deal with cartel activity and drug trafficking, but their efforts were not considered sufficient. Thus, the administration argues it had no choice but to take strong measures. Despite the administration's explanation, several economic analysts warned that the timing for these tariffs was particularly troubling, given that inflation remained in the stubborn high range and newer data also pointed towards an unstable economic trend. Reports say that last year, Canada, Mexico, and China constituted over $1.4 trillion in imports into the U.S., representing over 40% of all goods entering the country, making many concerned that tariffs will significantly impact prices for American consumers. Goods that were arguably expected to experience a spike in prices include fresh produce, automobiles and car parts, and electronic devices like phones and computers. Officials clarified that crude oil, one of Canada's biggest imports, would not be subject to the entire 25% tariff, but would face a 10% tax. While this exclusion may be helpful to the energy sector, to some extent, it will not palliate the overall negative economic impact of tariffs. Even the effects of the decision were quickly mirrored in global markets. Stocks of major automakers with production facilities in Mexico experienced sharp declines. Reports showed that Volkswagen's stock dropped nearly by 4%, while Stellantis, STLA, the parent company of Chrysler and Jeep, had fallen by almost 7%. According to several market analysts, all these signs indicate investors' concerns regarding potential disruptions to supply chains, inflationary pressures, and slower economic growth. However, China and Canada have acted in retaliation almost swiftly against the U.S. tariffs, with the expectation that Mexico would join in. According to a statement issued by the State Council Tariff Commission on March 4, 2025, Beijing has thus levied 15% tariffs on several major American agricultural imports, including chicken, wheat, corn, and cotton. Further developments in trade tensions towards confrontation between these two economic giants came with the imposition by the Commission of a 10% tariff on sorghum, soybeans, pork, beef, aquatic products, fruits, vegetables, and dairy products. In addition to tariffs, the statement made by China's Ministry of Commerce also indicated yet another significant action against American companies. the inclusion of 15 U.S. firms, which includes drone manufacturer Skydio, into its list of entities being controlled for export. This ban practically prevents Chinese firms from exporting dual-use items that can be used for civilian or military purposes. These companies are under a planned political economic agenda to erode U.S. technological and industrial strengths. Analysts say that China opted for a measured yet strategic response to trade. According to Alfredo Montufar Helu, head of the China Center for the Conference Board, in retaliation, China targeted those sectors most relied upon for Trump's core support base. He opined that China's approach allows for negotiation, which could mitigate further adverse economic consequences should diplomacy commence. In a regular press briefing, Lin Jian, a spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry, issued a warning to the United States on continued escalation, stating that if the United States chooses to continue on a tariff war, trade war, or any form of economic confrontation, China will stand firm. Lin stressed that the Chinese people never feared oppression and would not submit when under any form of pressure, coercion, or threat. He further remarked that if the U.S. thought it was inducing compliance through extreme pressure tactics, it was making a grave miscalculation. China's countermeasures extended beyond the tariff. Among other economic checks and balances, officials announced that they had halted lumber imports from the United States, suspended the export permits of 3 American firms supplying soybeans, and launched an anti-dumping investigation into certain U.S. fiber optic products. Beijing's response has intensified lately under already tense circumstances. Analysts are now questioning the extent to which the trading war will go and whether Trump's moves will escalate or find a way to reverse it before it goes beyond control. One of the claims that Trump made for imposing tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico was said to be pressuring these countries to tighten their borders concerning fentanyl trafficking into the United States. The U.S. law enforcement agencies suspected that several entities based in China were found supplying precursor chemicals, which were then used by the drug cartels of both the U.S. and Mexico to produce a fentanyl substance in illicit labs. On March 4, 2025, the State Council Information Office of China published a document detailing measures the government had undertaken to control fentanyl-related substances in the past few years, as reported by China's state news agency, Xinhua. China reportedly detailed its methodology on international drug control, indicating to other nations that China advocates mutual cooperation, not accusations or blame shifting. On the other hand, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made it clear in a news conference that Canada would not bow to any U.S. tariff. He announced that his government would immediately impose a 25% tariff on 30 billion Canadian dollars worth of goods from the U.S., with another $125 billion in tariffs to follow within 21 days. Addressing Trump directly, he criticized the decision, calling it a very dumb thing to do. Trudeau also stressed that a trade conflict between 2 close allies is exactly what their global adversaries would want to see. Therefore, the payment of these tariffs, according to Canada's Department of Finance, will happen immediately on virtually all American goods. These include dairy, meats, grains, wines, beers, apparel, footwear, motorcycles, cosmetics, and pulp and paper goods. Trudeau also said that Canada would contest the legality of U.S. tariffs using dispute resolution claims at the World Trade Organization and under the USMCA trade agreement. However, he noted that Canada's counter tariffs would stay in force until U.S. tariffs are lifted. Besides the tariffs, Trudeau also said that the government was exploring non-tariff measures with the provinces and territories, reiterating that there is no winner in a trade war. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, whose province is Canada's largest, restated a previous threat to cut energy supplies to the United States in retaliation. Ford said he would impose energy restrictions with a smile on his face, while urging other provinces to follow suit. He added that he would act decisively if necessary. He warned that Ontario's energy was essential to the eastern U.S. While Trump claimed exporters pay tariffs, economists noted that importers, usually businesses, incurred upfront payments. Unless businesses absorb those expenses, they pass them on to the consumers through higher prices. However, Mexico's President, Claudia Sheinbaum, said retaliatory tariffs against the United States will be announced on March 9, 2025. Along with those, there will be additional non-tariff measures. She said she might have a phone call with Trump on March 6, 2025. Speaking to reporters in Mexico City, she noted that these U.S. tariffs affect not only local but foreign businesses doing business in Mexico and, most importantly, hurt the people of Mexico. She said no one benefits from such decisions, and the economic war drums are beating dangerously close. Cracks of concern began to appear despite the USA's healthy state of the economy. A report issued by the Bureau of Economic Analysis at the end of the week showed that consumer spending had fallen short of expectations by declining during January, while another document indicated that consumer prices had risen over the same duration. Analysts have continued to warn of the persistent inflation, due to which the long-term economic outlook remains pessimistic. Although consumer confidence has plummeted, the reports say that it declined sharply at the beginning of the year and was recorded as one of the steepest falls since starting, paying little attention to these incremental declines. Another much-used measure of consumer confidence reported its worst result since records began being kept in 1978, adding to the growing uncertainty around American households. Given that consumer spending made up more than two-thirds of activity, economists were worried about this trend. In Friday's jobs report, more confirmation was expected that employment growth was stagnating. Meanwhile, first-time applications for jobless benefits rose more than expected last week. That should ring alarm bells for the labor market. The Trump administration had already started laying off thousands of federal workers, which economists said would impact significantly through the disruption of local economies that depended heavily on government employment. Meanwhile, federal spending was mentioned as reduced. Therefore, essential services were shut down, breaking the income for many Americans. Trump's immigration clampdown presented another difficult dimension to the economy. According to industry insiders, the major sectors, home building and agriculture, that relied heavily on immigrant labor descended into full and guarded form. Industry leaders demonstrated concern that a lack of labor would increase operational costs and slow economic growth. In response to the newly imposed tariffs, Tiffany Smith, Vice President for Global Trade Policy at the National Foreign Trade Council, NFTC, warned the decision could strain efforts to build a stronger shared border with Canada and Mexico. In a statement released March 3, 2025, she warned that the move risked igniting a trade war with two of America's closest trading partners. Smith pointed out that the NFTC supported the administration's efforts to curb illegal activities at the border. However, she emphasized grave concerns about the economic implications that the tariffs might have. She argued the policy would increase costs for American businesses and consumers, ultimately undermining U.S. economic growth rather than strengthening it. Trump and his administration signaled that the latest round of tariffs was only a start, with officials indicating that more severe measures could follow. On March 4, 2025, Trump went directly to PM Trudeau, saying that the U.S. would take immediate reciprocal action by increasing tariffs on Canada. He addressed Governor Trudeau via Truth Social, suggesting that he be made aware of the consequences of retaliatory tariffs against U.S. goods. He reiterated that any tariff imposed by Canada would be met by an equal and instant hike in reciprocal tariffs on U.S. goods. The reciprocal tariffs, matched dollar for dollar against other countries' tariffs, were set to commence on April 2, 2025, thereby raising tensions with America's closest trading partners. Steel and aluminum tariffs, targeted against industries critical for household manufacturing and international trade, had also been scheduled for March 12, 2025. At the same time, Trump hinted at further tariff action, indicating that the administration was ready to increase the pressure in its trade war. The week before, Trump had signed an executive order to investigate Canadian lumber tariffs, reiterating his long-standing argument that the U.S. had little need for Canadian lumber. Nonetheless, economic analysts warned that such tariffs could significantly increase the cost of new homes and thus add more pressure to an already inflation-battered housing market, pushing homeownership even farther out of reach for American families. Moreover, on March 3, 2025, Trump reiterated that tariffs might be placed on agricultural imports to stimulate domestic sales and help American farmers. He mentioned that such tariffs would take effect on April 2nd to coincide with the reciprocal tariff timeline. No formal policy had been put into action as of yet, but it was clear that further trade restrictions were around the corner. Anyways, as the world braces for the potential economic domino effect, one question looms large. Will Trump's gamble force concessions from America's trade partners, or will it backfire and push the U.S. economy into deeper turmoil? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.